Every entrepreneur has a story. Welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, where each episode your host, Brian Carney, will share a drink with a successful business owner and have them discuss their unique journey, gaining insight on what it takes to be an entrepreneur and the different ways to get there. Brian isn't just a beer nerd, he's also the co-founder of River's Edge Advisors, a financial planning firm headquartered in Delaware, specializing in working with business owners. It's time to pour yourself a drink and enjoy a happy half hour with an entrepreneur.
And then I also have to, I don't know if you know, the other side has to click a button to say.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm being recorded. Sweet.
They're like, continue.
All right, you ready?
Absolutely.
And by the way, do you care if it's Chris or Christopher?
It doesn't matter if you want to switch it every time to confuse people. That sounds good.
Perfect. Love it. All right, here we go. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Brian Carney. My guest today is Christopher Bruce, owner of Kingc Creative. Chris has an incredibly diverse background, acting, producing, hosting, and even spending time as a professional mascot before starting his business. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, it's really good to be here. And yes, I am excited to bore everybody with all of those details.
Perfect. I can't wait. Let's knock out what we're drinking first. So I'm going to be tackling a Yards Brewery special limited release called Heritage Surf, which is an homage to a surf shop from Sea Isle City in New Jersey. So we'll give this a try. See what the deal is.
Sounds pretty exciting. You got the little homage, as they say, and an exclusive. I mean, this sounds
very exclusive, limited release.
Wow,
so what are you going to be tackling?
Well, I was trying to find a really crazy, exciting beer like a Wailing Walrus or something like that, but I didn't have time. So I was lucky enough to be able to go in and grab a little bit of bourbon here,
Perfect.
Little brown water, if you will. And I even put it in this glass in time for us to sip together and have some fun.
Well, cheers to you. Thank you for doing this.
Well, put hair on you. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's start out. Tell us a little bit about Kingc Creative.
Yeah, I mean, Kingc Creative, we're right there downtown in Wilmington, Delaware at the corner of 8th and Market. And we're a film, video, music, audio recording studio, but we also do a lot of creative consulting. My background is pretty varied, as you alluded to. And through that, in all those experiences, we bring a lot of insight, a lot of perspective, and a lot of, I guess, ability to deliver on creative concepts quickly and to really connect with your audience. So at its core, and especially for me personally, that's what it's all about. It's all about connecting with an audience. So whether it's your online audience or a real-time in-person stage or event space, or you name it, it's just about connecting. So that's what we're all about.
That's great. Well, how do you help clients achieve that goal? If the goal is always to connect to the audience, how do you help them achieve that?
Well, I mean, we take a very consultative approach to our work. So it's not just, hey, you guys need a video, here you go. It's, well, let's learn a little bit more about you guys. So where have you been? What are your goals? What are you trying to get to? And through that process of really understanding and getting lost in their world, that's when we can kind of come up with the solutions to essentially help guide them to get there and to make those connections. That's really kind of, I think, what differentiates us a little bit is that intention, that purpose behind creating the content. It's not just, hey, you need something, here it is.
Right. Well, I think a lot of times when, business owners come to you with like, hey, I need video marketing materials for my website or for this thing I'm doing, they don't even know where to begin. And it kind of can be almost overwhelming and intimidating to the point where they go, I don't even know if I want to tackle this.
Yeah, I think it can be overwhelming for a lot of people. And that really is the starting point. And I try to tell people all the time, don't wait to talk to us, right? Get with us as soon as possible so that we can help you figure out maybe what you should do and how to plan for it.
Right.
Because that is one of the biggest obstacles. And a lot of people give up because it does just be like, you know what? I just can't, right?
Right.
I just don't have time. I've got my actual job to do and my actual business to run, which isn't that.
Yeah.
So, it happens all the time. And we're here just to kind of be a resource.
Yeah.
And hopefully just be a guide to help them make those connections, like I said before, with their audience, whether, they're a customer that is at home, or if it's, really every business is unique, which is part of what we love. And actually that's what my shirt says here. we are all perfectly unique.
That's a perfect saying. I love it.
And that's just, so, hey, way to set that up.
Yeah.
And, that's really just the thing that we love to do. And I think every day what makes it interesting for us to come to the studio and to just do that, get lost in those worlds,
Yeah.
find those connections, really problem solve, on a daily basis to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how does your background lead you to get into this world? I mean, you started as as UD, the mascot.
It's just UD.
It's just UD.
So it's spelled YOU like you, and DEE. So it's UD with the interlocking UD in the middle. So a lot of people would go, yo, UD, and that happened a lot, but it's just UD.
Can you tell I didn't go to UD?
It's fine. I'm not going to. Don't tell me you went to Nova. That would be horrible.
No.
All right, I'm just kidding. For all those people at home, Wildcats, good for you. Long story short, yeah. So for me, I was actually pre-med. I know I've told this story, and if you've seen some other interviews, I was pre-med to start, and I went to the University of Delaware. Got an opportunity to become the mascot, and through that, it just led me down all kinds of different paths that I never expected, and changed my course and made me reevaluate kind of what I wanted to do, and ended up taking a practical route of a master or basically a business degree with management and marketing. So that works really well, and understanding how to just connect with people in that way. And then through all the performance related work that I did, which was very much varied, whether it was stage or film or sports, entertainment, we were constantly, that was our challenge, right? It's like, how do we better connect with this audience? How do we make these, connections? How do we entertain? And the only way to really do that well is to get to know your audience and to understand how to craft a routine, a bit, a moment. And do that consistently, where you just knew that no matter what, when you walk out there, you can make it happen.
So I have to ask this. You won the National Mascot Championship. I have a whole lot of things in my head of what that looks like.
Well, we should start there. So what does it look like for you? And I'll let you know how close you are.
Have you ever seen that video where a bunch of mascots are playing a bunch of little kids in football and they keep like running the kids over?
I've been a part of a few of those games, by the way. They're fun.
That's what I have in my mind. And then I have sort of like an old school, like the movie Old School, where Will Ferrell catches on fire and he's wearing a mascot head. That's kind of somewhere in there is where I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, first of all, those football games are amazingly fun. Now, there were times when it wasn't a Pop Warner team and it was basically like a middle school team. And I was like, all right, these guys have pads. They've got, this is, there's a point where this doesn't get fun for us anymore, right? We look like giant piñatas, but at the end of the day, we may not have kind of the gear that they've got going on. So it was always nice when they were, at the right age, and you could have fun with them, and really nobody could get hurt, including the kids, of course, because that was important. But I remember we would do stuff where you would try to time it out, where you're literally jumping over the center. Like you're taking like one of the lead blockers and then throwing them to the runner, as opposed to make it so it's just like those games were always so much fun and just hilarious. But the competition was all part of a bigger weekend down in Disney World, believe it or not. And there was a couple stages to the process. So we would submit a video. And that was a compilation video showing us doing stuff throughout the year, whether it was community events, sporting events, you name it. And there was a bunch of categories that they based the points on, essentially. So we would get graded and rated on that. And then the top characters or performers would then get invited from that video submission to go down to Orlando and to compete. And you had to come up with a routine, and you had a certain amount of time, and there was all these rules and like the size of the props. And actually there's a lot more rules now, because I actually kind of created some of those rules based on things I did that they changed things for. Kind of awesome. Because I had this, when I won, I actually built this huge rotating set, which was all like PVC and wire and wheels. And like we had to like make it all in Delaware, break it all down, take it down in a van, rebuild it on site there, which was insane. And just watching everybody kind of watch us build it, it was hilarious. They were just like, what is that? Like, and what? And
we're definitely going to lose now.
It was UD's fun house, and each room had a different theme. And there was it was all kinds of timing with music and sound effects and all kinds of stuff.
That's awesome.
It was just fun. But the thing that I always thought was interesting about that competition, it was so not really what you typically did in your actual environment. It was like so produced and so, much just for that.
Right.
I always, and this is coming from somebody that won it.
Yeah.
I thought that it wasn't maybe the best reflection of talent in that field, or
Sure.
what the characters were really doing and how they could be represented. But you play by the rules, you learn the game, and we
Yep.
did it well and we won. So that was awesome. It was a lot of fun. It was a great team experience because we had a team of performers. I was just the captain and was able to be the captain in college for 3 years as the mascot for the University of Delaware. So that's
awesome
the thing, right? And
Yeah.
how cool is that?
That's awesome. So we actually had Dave Raymond on, and I know you're pretty close with Dave. So how do you? So obviously, for those of you that didn't hear that episode, Dave Raymond is the original Philly fanatic, which, in my opinion, and I don't think it's should be disputed, the Philly fanatic is the greatest mascot of all time. So you make the leap to go to start doing professional work with the Wizards and Swoop as my personal favorite Eagles.
Yeah, so I did a lot of professional stuff, and I worked with Dave for a long time with Raymond Entertainment Group. I actually helped him start that business as, his main performer and kind of right-hand man in a lot of ways.
That's awesome.
And sort of took over because he was performing independently, and he had a character Sport, which he did, and that's kind of, I started traveling with him in the summers while still in college.
Yeah.
And when we created Raymond Entertainment Group, we developed Reggie.
Okay.
For those keeping up at home, REG, Raymond Entertainment Group, Reggie. See
Got it.
there? Yeah.
Yep.
So, wildly creative. And so we did that, but it was a really fun character. And that character, actually, you can see that character very live now in Whiting, Indiana, which I'm sure you talked about the Mascot Hall of Fame a little bit with him, which was something that essentially was one of my original ideas that Dave and I cultivated, and, was a cool thing to do together, and to see it now out there living and breathing, especially now after the year we all had,
right?
Still hanging in there and kind of doing what it's doing is great. But what I did was with Reggie, we toured all over the country, all over North America, at baseball games, hockey games, you name it. And we were essentially an outside entertainment act that teams would book to bring in, and we would kind of get the run of the arena that night and really push the fans in ways that their home mascots didn't do, because we would do bits with umpires, with players, with fans, on the field, in the stands, all kinds of stuff. And the teams would let us do more, quite frankly, because we were, they were paying a pretty good amount of money for us to come in.
Sure.
And then outside of that, which I did about 20 years of that touring performance, I was also doing a lot of work with the Philadelphia Eagles. My good buddy Ryan Hughes is out in Napa now, went from being a professional mascot to in the wine industry. So
wow,
that's a fun chat. Maybe I can get him as a guest for you. He's awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And was Swoop for 12 years, actually, with the Eagles, and has a great story. So we did a lot of work with the Philadelphia Eagles. And then I was the mascot, like you said, with the Washington Wizards, and did that for, a few seasons. And ultimately, and actually right now, Facebook in their memories is popping up videos from a really cool trip we took to Poland.
Oh, cool.
When I was there as the mascot for the Wizards, along with Marcin Gortat, who was their center at the time.
Yeah.
And a huge celebrity in Poland, like the Michael Jordan of Poland. I'm
really?
telling you. I saw people's knees buckle
when
this guy came around a corner. And I'm like, listen, Marcin's awesome. He's super cool. He's the Polish Hammer.
Right.
But really? That's like unbelievable. And, it turns out that he's just had a huge impact in his country. Definitely from an NBA standpoint was one of the biggest success stories. And he's out there, he's got actual full working schools.
Wow.
That he's sponsored and developed. And we were out there doing basketball clinics and camps. So we were in Poland for like 2 weeks, touring all over the country, doing these camps and clinics and a bunch of other fun things, including when I landed. The first thing I did, literally within hours, I get into Warsaw, we go to the hotel, we check in, and then we're off to the zoo, because Marcin had just adopted a giraffe that they named after him, and I needed to feed the giraffe in costume.
Wow.
So, and this had to happen immediately. So I was like, okay, welcome to Poland. Here we go.
Right in it.
Like, literally. And then that night we were watching, it was with one of the big international or European, the cup there, and Poland was doing great. And this is in the last round of that, and they're playing it now, but
yeah,
it was such a wild trip, and we were doing military escorts and like helicopters. We had a fleet of Porsches.
Amazing.
It was just crazy, and this is all because I was a professional idiot.
Right.
So,
what is your, besides your touring Poland with the most famous person in Poland, you have one particular story as a mascot that you love?
I mean, that trip really does stand out as one of the probably more special kind of trips, partly because it was 2 weeks and it was just the group of people we were with was
Yeah.
incredible. And we, obviously other than feeding a giraffe, which, my 1-year-old daughter and I just fed a giraffe. So that's less cool now, I guess. Way cooler for her. So now that's the
Sure.
better giraffe feeding story.
Right.
Gee whiz, giraffe feeding is less important. So, but we went to the Polish embassy. We literally, met with the prime minister. Like it was this kind of trip. There was a military exposition in this secret military base that they put on just for us with tanks and artillery and all this stuff. We roll up and there's people coming out of the forest in like motorcycles and ghillie suits that we didn't even see were there.
Holy
It
crap.
was just nuts.
That is nuts.
So, I mean, that was pretty awesome. We did, I performed in Paris. I was there for like probably 30 hours, touchdown to takeoff for a pair, they're like their professional basketball leagues all-star game. And it was because we had games and I could go, but I had to go and then come back because we had games pretty tight.
Yeah.
So going to Paris for a day, that was kind of fun. And, so many of these great experiences and the people you just meet, the other performers and the kind of the brotherhood, so to speak, or the fraternity, which is, less women, but there are a few.
Yeah.
And, partly because it's just, I think, so physical, but, there's been some really talented women that have done it as well. And that's a lot of fun. And for me, it's sort of allowed me to kind of try a lot of things to really understand how to connect with people and to cut my teeth in those ways and then translate that to my emceeing and my hosting and other types of, human performance related, kind of things. So
I mean, to be a mascot and be in a suit and not really talk and to be able to create a connection has to be incredibly difficult. So I've seen you MC a bunch of different events and you're outstanding at it.
Thank you.
How exhausting and or difficult is that? I mean, I would imagine it's one thing live, but I've seen you do a couple virtual events and that's got to be a totally different animal. So you're emceeing. How difficult is that for you to do?
I kind of equate sometimes and it is, but you have to be able to allow yourself to get really genuinely lost in the moment.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to be comfortable and to trust yourself. It's okay. You don't have to be perfect.
Sure.
You just need to be authentic. You need to be genuine and you need to be present.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. And, yes, anytime you're doing anything, you're going to get a little bit of adrenaline. You're going to get a little bit of, you can call them nerves. But I think for me, I equate being out there on the stage to like breathing.
Right.
I really do it because it's just something that is somewhat innately natural. I love it. It's something that I definitely crave and want to do more of because those connections, that live interaction, it's just magical. And you hear that a lot with performers, whether they're, say they're a stage performer versus a film actor or something. And it's something about a live audience you just can't replicate.
Right.
And that has been one of the hardest things for, I think, a lot of people to transition to virtual.
Sure.
And I think I've done that pretty well because of my varied experiences.
Yeah.
And I just had an event the other night for LLS and I've done a number of events for them and it was very successful. It went really smoothly. But again, it's because you understand that you still need to give that same energy. You still need to make that same connection. And that's where a lot of people, I think they miss the mark because they'll be on a virtual thing and they sort of just are sitting there and they're not really giving the same energy, right?
Yep.
They'll do it and they're looking down a little bit or they're not connect. And then it's just like, what a difference, right? I mean, the simplest thing, like looking at the camera directly and driving that energy to it makes all the difference in the world. But being able to keep your energy at a level, it's hard. It's hard to do it when you don't have feedback, right? You don't really have an audience. There was somebody on the program over the weekend that made a joke about how they normally would give a joke. They were doing an acceptance speech and how they would normally say a joke in this moment, but they've learned over this last year that really they don't hit the mark when they fall on, deaf ears, when everybody's on mute, there's no reaction. So it's like, there's no punchline. So
Yeah.
So
I did a presentation one time and it was, everyone had their camera off. And I felt the closest I've ever felt to like a comedian when he bombs, I just felt nothing coming back from the screen, and it was really difficult. So for you to be able to have the screens off for have the cameras off, and to be able to still, really keep that energy up and be engaging, I think is a pretty difficult task, and something that's pretty impressive.
well, I mean, I appreciate it, but I think for you in that moment, it might have been better if they booed, right? Like
Right.
if you'd gotten something, you're like,
Right.
something.
Yeah. Apathy was just, that's how I felt, like just total apathy.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Can somebody cry for me at least?
right. So how do you decide, when did you decide that you needed to start your own business, and when it was time, and what was was there a leading event that made you decide, like, okay, it's time for me to do this?
I mean, I've always been entrepreneurial to a certain extent. I was the kid, that was going to build a museum in his basement and charge admission to all my local neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
Just because I thought this was interesting and therefore I should share it, but people will want to pay for it, not just share, So, I think that's always been a part of it, right? I always did well with like I was a swimmer growing up, and I was like the top, leukemia swim-a-thon runner for like 5 years in a row, because I just put in my mind, I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do this really well. But ultimately for me, it was something that Dave and I were working together for a long time. The business was going fine. It was just, I had interests that were outside of what Raymond Entertainment did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't do video and film and content development. We were an entertainment company. We were a brand development company. We helped universities and corporations and individuals develop mascots or characters, and did that with a really intentional approach. It wasn't like, again, same way we don't just do a video, we don't just make you a character, right? We build a brand, and you have story, and all these things matter because ultimately that's what connects, right? So there was a lot that I took, in a way from that and built on it, but the video side and the content side was not an interest. And we just sort of went in those directions, and we had conversations, and ultimately we developed a really nice opportunity for me to be able to go and do that. And for Dave and I to kind of maintain a really great relationship. And I went off and I developed Bruce Productions, which was the original, thing that I went off and did on my own, and did that for a long time. And then 2 years ago, essentially we developed Kingc Creative as a bit of an elevation to that brand.
Yeah.
And you'll see some similarities in the logo. If you look at the blue lion, it lives on both, but the Kingc Creative is essentially a little bit more evolved and grown up. And that was just a great opportunity to move downtown, to have a presence, and to grow things even further.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your space, because you've done an incredible job. I've been in the space, not for a couple of years, but I've been in for maybe a year or two. So you've done a lot of different things to attract people to come down to your space. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a lot of form and function, right? We took this space, which was right on the corner. We've got a great open foyer out front, lots of really nice natural light, and that alone is attractive. But it was dated. It was a really dated space, so we changed out all the floors. Some of that stone you see behind me is an example of some natural element that we brought into the space to give it some life. And up front, there's a stage and like a really cool wood treatment with some greenery, and we brought in some new colors, and we kind of reshaped some of the way that the layout was to make it flow, and to give ourselves ability to create content, to use these spots for things like this, right? For interviews, for photos, for content, podcasts, you name it. And that was really important for us to be able to create a vibe and an environment that would allow us to be creative, allow our clients to come in and feel comfortable, and to envision themselves being able to create in it as well. Now, it's not always studio stuff, right? We're out on location all the time. We'll be out on location tomorrow and really the rest of the week doing different projects, filming, which is super important because we want to capture their essence, right? They're not this space. They're their own. And so the combination works really well for us. And the yoga studio and things that are in the back, is something that we created not only for ourselves, which is important to have a place that we could escape.
For sure. Yeah.
We fitted it out. We call it Studio Nurture.
I like it.
Our place to nurture your mind, your body, your soul. You stretch, you meditate, whatever you need to do, right? Work on your dance moves. There's mirror walls, but get ready. Life is coming at you. So take it on.
Yeah,
There's a lot of TikTok moves, and I'm sure you're working on. We've
absolutely.
got a great spot for you to really refine it.
I have a 13-year-old daughter. I see a lot of TikTok action,
Yeah.
so I
So
know
there-
what the deal is.
Well, there you have it. So you
Yeah.
know all about it. But that space also is a great spot that we can rent out. You know,
Yeah.
allows, like, say, if you're a yoga instructor and you want to maybe do some private classes, or
Right.
maybe want to, explore a space downtown, it's an option. Now we're
Yeah.
appointment only with that kind of thing. So we've got it pretty much locked down for the sake of our clients, for
Sure.
our equipment and everything else. But it's a wonderful environment that we love to share and co-create and co-collaborate with. And
Yeah.
we got a couple floors of space, honestly. And it's
great.
It's all the way from Market Street to Shipley on that 8th Street block. So
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things you talked about is sort of fostering creativity.
yeah.
I'm not a creative person. So like acting, no dice. I can't sing. I can't draw. My handwriting's horrible. All that. That's just not part of my brain.
It's amazing you could put on your own pants.
You said it better than I could. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But I would imagine it's difficult to work with a bunch of creative people and just say, hey, go be creative. It seems to me, as a non-creative person, that
Yeah.
might be a difficult switch to flip. So it was the goal behind the space, amongst other things, to really help foster that creativity. Is that sort of where you went with that?
Well, I mean, you touched on something that is a real issue, I think, in a creative environment, which is you're dealing with creative people, right?
Right.
Now, I have this conversation with a lot of people, and I personally am not somebody that feels like you have to be one or the other.
Right.
Now, maybe that's just something that in some ways I tend to be able to kind of navigate back and forth from wildly creative to what are our goals? How do we get it done? Execute, all that, which don't tend to go together traditionally.
Sure. Right.
So the thing that we wanted to create is an environment where we could be creative and the team together so that we can be creative and organized.
Yep.
So that's the key, right? The balance is in, and I say it all the time around here, is like, ideas are not the problem, right?
Right.
And that's because we can come up with ideas all day. And if given the opportunity and listening to your story and finding about your audience, if we do our job, we're going to come up with ideas. I'm not
Yep.
worried about that. How do we get it done?
Mm-hmm.
What are the goals? What are the marks we got to hit along the way? And how is it going to make it, make an impact, right?
Yep.
So the ideas, for me at least, are secondary, because I know I got a drawer full of ideas right here. They're right here. We'll get to that whenever we need it. How do we make it happen? What's the plan? What's the structure behind it? Who are the players involved?
Right.
Who's the audience? Like all that stuff. And that's where I think a lot of creatives miss the mark and struggle.
Sure.
Because they just want to create. I just want to create. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so I get it. I want to create too.
Yeah.
But
But there has to be a point to it.
Yeah, but it has to matter. There has to be a point. I mean, there doesn't always have to be a point to create.
Right.
Somebody's walking by. And but for a business, there's ROI, there's real numbers involved, and it has to make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
So that it doesn't always have to be exactly an ROI number. It could just be like, we have a certain amount of creative that we're going to, because we feel there's an intrinsic value to just getting out there and doing something fun.
Yep.
Fun for fun's sake. And that's fine. But that should be part of a plan,
Yeah.
right? Like, and if that is a choice we make together based on that plan, then great.
Yep.
But I don't like to see people just do things for the sake of doing it. I think we should ask at least another question or two before we start, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
all. And it can be frustrating to other creative folks, because I do like to try to like dial that in.
Right.
And because sometimes they're already running when you're like, we shouldn't have even gotten out of our chair yet.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've already missed because you just ran. We actually should be going that way.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly. If
and
you want to run, we got to point you in the right direction.
at least get ourselves aimed correctly, and then we
Yep.
can go all in, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. And I know we're sort of circling around this a little bit, but it's so important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that takes a lot of leadership. And I think one of the things in other interviews I've seen you do and things I've read about you is that one thing that I think takes real leadership is to say, we don't care about who gets the credit. That's unimportant. Making sure we get to the final correct product for the client is really what matters. And I think that, I think ego gets away in the lot. So how have you been able to kind of take your ego and put it to the side and make sure that you're doing the sum is the parts are equal better than the sum.
Yeah. Well, I think it helps that I was a professional idiot for quite a while. So,
Right.
ego and pride out the window, right?
Right.
So that's less important. The result is more important. I think the journey is about being able, for me, it's like, I want to be able to create, and I want to be able to help others create and get lost in these worlds for, the rest of my life. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if I do it well.
Right.
Right. And so you have to be, purposeful in that approach. I think you need to take pride in your work. I do think pride is something that people leverage in a negative a lot of times. It's almost can become an excuse.
Sure.
And, if you, I have an acronym, I say it all the time too. It's like people rationalizing internal doubts and excuses. And that's what pride stands for a lot of people. And that's because they use it as a crutch, right? Oh, I can't do that because whatever.
Right.
Insert pride. But the reality is you should have pride in who you are, pride in what you're doing, pride in where you're going. Be proud of where you're from. That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's where pride should come in. Let's just be honest with ourselves when it comes to the excuses.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. That's our insecurity.
Yeah.
It's not our pride.
Right.
Difference.
That's a great point. And that really is a great point.
Yeah.
That theme has really come up a lot in through these podcasts, is that a lot of the most successful business owners are able to take their pride or their ego, put it to the side and say like, hey, I know you're better at this task than I am.
Right.
And I'm fine with that. And I think that, again, that is a testament to true leadership.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think for anybody that's going to do anything of any note, you have to find good people. They're hard to find, right? Finding really good, solid people that are willing to work. Talk to any restaurant owner right now.
Right.
And have that discussion because, man, I talk about empathetic. I am feeling for that sector right now because it's just tough.
Yeah.
And unfortunately it's a lot of human nature, but we got to be better than that. I think at the end of the day, we got to hold ourselves accountable and up to a higher standard.
Yep.
And you can't want it more
Yeah.
for someone than they want it for themselves. It
Such
just
a great
doesn't
point.
work in the long run, right?
Yep.
But what you have to try to do is cultivate an environment where people can feel important, where they can thrive, where their opinions matter.
Yep.
And you know what? The only thing I do know, and this is obviously a twist on what's been out there for a long time, is the only thing I know is that I don't know bleep, right?
Right.
And that's a good starting point because more days than not, I'm learning more than I'm, teaching, right?
Sure.
So let's just be open to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Open.
Yeah.
I think that alone is a huge, huge win.
Well, you bring up having good people, and in the interactions I've had with people in your company, it seems like the culture is outstanding and that people really get to do what they really enjoy doing. How are you able to build such a positive workplace for culture and sort of empower your employees to feel that way?
Again, I think it's about being genuine. I think it's about being authentic. Are we perfect? Of course not. Nobody is, right? That's a thing. But, I think you just have to, you try to value people, you try to be real, and you also try to figure out what it is they do want to do, right? So that you can hopefully cultivate opportunities for them to do those things and to maybe try things that they're not sure. Hey, I would like to try that. So give them opportunities. And, we're working on that every day. We're definitely growing as a company, and I'm definitely growing 100% as, it's hard for me to even say a leader, but I hear you.
Yeah.
But, I think ultimately it's about having that intention and that mindset and allow people to thrive. And the best thing that could happen is somebody shows up and they're better at me at doing something. And I'm like, thank God, you're awesome. Like, let's go.
Yeah, you do it.
And that happens most of the time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the effect the pandemic had on your business and what you were going through as a business owner during that period.
Yeah. I mean, I had a whole series of COVID conversations, which I don't know if you saw any of those, but we ended up doing about 25 of those during the pandemic. Really the heart of that, when people weren't doing anything or trying to figure out what to do. And we were right there with you, and partly we made a choice to do that because we needed to stay busy. We needed to stay productive. And we felt, well, at least this is something we can do to maybe help some people through it, including ourselves. Right.
Sure.
So that was one thing that we did. We transitioned into some of that. We definitely worked towards and helped a lot of people with some virtual events. A lot of growing pains in that space, a lot of lessons learned along
No
the way.
doubt.
And man, everybody wants it to be perfect out of the box. And, we're right there with you. We've even recently had a couple little issues that kind of snagged us, and it was frustrating, but again, you live, you learn, you get better, you're stronger for it, and you
Right.
move ahead. And for us, that's really what it was all about. It was, just getting through it, staying productive, staying busy, and allowing ourselves to just keep moving forward.
Sure.
We did some renovations, like we just did what we could to kind of stick around, and we helped some groups locally. I don't know if you saw like the Wilmington Strong video. That was something we were able to do to help collaborate with Wilmington Alliance and
Yeah.
others locally to support business.
Right.
It was something that we just felt like, hey, we need to do what we can. And there
Yeah.
was other organizations like, Wi-Fi and Nerd It Now and others that we did some collaborative community-based
Yeah.
efforts to, bridge that digital divide and the learning gaps and all the things that were really full front and center with schools being closed and the e-learning and virtual and all that was going on with that, and still obviously is affecting people, and
Yeah.
was before the pandemic, but just got accentuated, and the light on it was just so bright
Right.
you couldn't ignore it anymore, right? So that was important, and it was great to be able to be a resource, to be a support for those types of things, and it really kept us alive because it gave us purpose through a time
The tough
where
time. Yeah.
I can't imagine if we were sitting around twiddling our thumbs and second guessing ourselves the whole time. I mean, that takes its toll.
Absolutely. Well, you bring up your collaboration with Nerd It Now. I had Mark Avis on the podcast, and
Yeah.
we really spend a little bit of time talking about that digital divide. Can you tell me a little bit about your project with DETV? I think it's a really great product.
Yeah, well, the DETV Kids whole platform, which is really a vertical for DETV as they continue to grow, and they're doing all kinds of great stuff. Leslie and Ivan and the whole team over there.
Yeah.
And the DTV Kids was a collaborative effort to develop content that was really a supplement to what these kids needed to keep up, right? To bring some locally produced, really well thought out and meaningful content that would supplement their education, to push them forward, to make sure they didn't fall behind, to bridge
Yeah.
those gaps. And it was all original and just, a ton of work. And we're really just getting started on what that could be.
Yeah.
We were able to put together some really, great initial content pieces.
That's
And
great.
we brought teachers, and there was music focus and art, and it was all STEM and STEAM and all the letters you can imagine
Sure.
that are important, depending on who you talk to, there's both, but there's purposeful content that hit curriculum that allowed, the parent or the teacher to know that their kid wouldn't be left behind if they were in a situation where they couldn't get to school, or maybe they learn a little bit differently, and this was just another way to help them along. So
Yeah.
that stuff, that the potential is huge, and we're getting creative on
Right.
a lot of original shows that if they do well here, you never know what that could turn into. So
Absolutely. And what a great thing to be focusing on, that sort of narrowing that divide for kids.
Yep.
So I do have to ask you, so you said you had about a 1-year-old?
Yeah. So, well, depending on when you see this, ultimately, so we had a baby on April 6th, 2020.
So that's a full
that's
quarantine
a
baby.
Quarantine pandemic baby.
Yeah. So what's it been like to have a baby in the middle of a global pandemic?
Man, I would say that it's a blessing and a curse, sure, but more of a blessing. I think because I was telling my wife, like, first of all, our baby is just, I can't even tell you how great this kid is. Like,
Sure.
he is like unbelievable. Like, so if there's a definition of a trap baby, this is what this is. So
Yep.
she sleeps all night.
Yep.
She eats everything. She doesn't, her temperament's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, we are so fortunate. I think in some ways it's partly because we got to spend extra time.
Right.
My wife was able to work from home. I was able to, we were all able to be here at the studio together.
It's great.
We wouldn't have had that time, right? My wife would have been back to work. She would have been in daycare way sooner.
Yep.
And she is now, which is great for socializing, right? And for us to be probably more productive ultimately during the day. But the extra time that we were able to have together was awesome. And one, we have another child if we do or don't, depending on what's in the cards, whatever.
Sure.
We can't count on that extra time, one.
Right.
And, the chances of them just being so like she'll wake up in the morning and it's really just a matter of when you want to go and get her. Like she'll play for an hour.
Amazing.
Like it's awesome. And
Trap Baby is definitely a good one.
It's like, which I'm okay with, obviously.
Sure. Absolutely.
But she's just been such an incredible addition to the family. It's hard to imagine a time without, Katie Beth as, it's Katie Butt, Katie Bruce, Katie whatever.
Yeah.
But Catherine Elizabeth as their full name, Katie or Catherine the Bruce, right?
Right.
It's hard to imagine a time without her in our lives, which anybody that's a parent, I think you probably would agree, right? It's a weird thing. It's such an innate, inherent thing.
Yep.
That, I couldn't be more grateful for her coming through, being a part of this last year.
Yeah.
Because it really did give us something great to focus on. And everybody be like, basically, 2020 can go whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, I can't fully agree with you on that.
Yeah. Not to mention, you have a newborn, you're not going anywhere anyway. So your life probably didn't change that much beside the work together thing.
Yes, no, that's true. You're probably right. In fact, if anything, like I said, it was a unique benefit outside of the hospital and like all that stuff and family not being able to visit.
Sure. That's a good point.
All those things are tough.
Yeah.
But she's so young.
She'll never remember that anyway.
It's not for her, right? It's for them anyway. So they're the ones that missed out. For us,
great point.
Yes, I would love for everybody to meet her.
Yeah.
But they will.
Yeah.
And lots of Zoom calls, lots of video chats, lots of all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But, there's nothing that really beats the connection, the human, actual in-person connection. And that's kind of comes back to what we were talking about, right? At the end of the day, that's
full
what really
circle
matters.
Yeah.
And
you just went full circle on it.
That's what we do, right?
Yeah.
So whether you do that online like we're doing now, which is such a great thing. I think that's one of the things that we got out of this year was people did find ways to connect, and picked up the phone or hopped on a video chat with people they hadn't seen in decades, years.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And that was one of the benefits.
I totally agree.
And embracing the technology in a way that wasn't really kind of fully embraced before.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's a good thing. We'll move forward. Change is inevitable. We just have to embrace it. And this forced a lot of people to change that weren't willing to or weren't ready prior.
Yep.
And just didn't have a choice. And
it was a little push off the bridge, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Chris, this is great. I really enjoyed talking to you. I appreciate your time. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Chris and his company, go to kingcreative.com. And if you want to learn a little bit more about how my firm helps business owners with their financial planning, visit riversedgeadvisors.com. To hear past episodes of the podcast, go to happy-half-hour.com. And finally, if you want to connect with me on the Untapped app, my username is brcarney7. So we've come to the time where I review this beer, rate this beer.
Boy.
So very good summer beer.
I sat through this whole thing, by the way, just for this moment. Finally.
You might be the first person to ever make it all the way through to listen to my review.
Most people are already out the door.
Already out the door, yeah.
I am on the edge of my seat. So tell me about this beer.
On a scale of out of 5, I'm going to give this a 4. This is a good beer, a beach beer. I'd sip this on the beach. So
maybe a 5 if you were toes in the sand.
Correct. Yes. If I was in a bathing suit, it is, today here in the great state of Delaware, it is 105 degrees or whatever it is, but this is refreshing. So I highly rate it. Well done by Yards.
Nice. And the name of it again?
The name is Heritage Surf IPA.
Heritage Surf IPA. I was just sipping on some Four Roses. Not a bad thing. Just simple. What we had, available. I'm gonna have to check out that beer. Good stuff. Hey man, cheers.
Cheers, Chris. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Hey, stay awesome.
All right, take care.
Thank you for listening to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, sponsored by Rivers Edge Advisors. For more information on how Rivers Edge Advisors can help you, visit their website at riversedgeadvisors.com. If you'd like to connect with Brian Carney for business advice or just to share a beer, follow him on Instagram at riversedgeadvisors_LLC.